Thanks everyone for coming. I actually really love that. Well, now you were just randomers that none of us know, which is I think a bit unusual for a beauty event, or at least my experience of a beauty event. Yes, we were restricted at capacity for this venue, but it was like this really welcome thing for me to be like, cool, we can each just invite 10 people that we really care about and respect and that we would like to have in a room together. I haven't been to New York for 6 years, so it's nice for me to visit again and just see what has changed, what hasn't changed, or probably more significantly, like how I've changed. And it's just been serendipitous that obviously Jess is here and that Maeva was also here, and that through a couple of introductions we were able to pull this event together last minute. Jess and I looked back to be like, when did we first get in touch? And it was about 4 years ago that I reached out just as a big fan, loving Jess's writing and her take on the industry. I think being a founder in the beauty industry for almost 10 years now, like your writing has significantly impacted how I think about beauty and my work, and what I'm trying to create for the future. So I'm like so grateful that you could be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here.
And also for Maeva, like we have been in each other's lives probably for maybe 10 years too.
Almost.
Yeah, and started our brands at the same time and have sort of at different points in time intersected over the celebrations and the tribulations of being a founder and all of the experiences that come with it. So I was excited for us to kind of get together and have a talk because I've had both Jess and Maeva on Fluff's podcast, Pretty Hard, where we try and just talk about the beauty industry as well as our personal relationships to beauty, the good, the bad, but really just being honest about it because there's so much involved. For me personally, like my personal life is so enmeshed with my brand, and it's very hard for me to see them separately or differently. And this conversation tonight, which we're recording obviously with the help of these guys, is very much just about our curiosities about our own work in the industry and asking each other those questions that often come up. So this like topic, we kind of chatted briefly beforehand about things we would want to discuss or what's happening in the beauty industry that maybe other brands or people in the industry aren't talking about. And we kind of thought that there are some like core topics around like purpose versus profit, gatekeeping versus being generous, and then expression versus exploitation. And my biggest frustration as a founder in the beauty industry is just like, I mean, pardon the pun, but how like glossy and superficial our industry is. And I understand that people want to hear good things and good news and we want to be happy, but like there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes. And I don't think there's a lot of support for founders or just a dialogue between customers and founders about what's going on, especially when there's stakeholders involved, especially as a brand grows, and there are people behind these brands who are changing over time. I've had Fluff for 7 years now. Brett is also
5 this year.
5. It's a long time. Like we change as individuals and the world changes alongside these brands. So it's a really interesting thing to try and communicate and like to evolve your brand as you evolve as an individual. So I wanted to start by asking Maeva, like, where you find yourself, Bread having recently been acquired, how do you feel about what it was when you started versus what it is now, and perhaps what your focus is or your biggest challenge at this point in time?
Yeah, so we had our acquisition, was it a couple of weeks ago? I want to say.
Congratulations also, like amazing.
And yeah, it's been, like I was saying before, different challenges now because I'm stayed on with the business, and a very unique kind of acquisition for the beauty industry, like for us and just like the industry at large. We weren't acquired by like a ginormous multinational corporation. We were acquired by a kind of smaller outfit that is newly established and is focused on acquiring and building specific types of brands. And in that process, like keeping the founders on, wanting to, I guess, build and develop brands or continue building and developing brands in a way that is still attached to the founder. So yeah, just navigating through all of that. And I think that the focus is really on, which is interesting because we're having this discussion about profit versus purpose, is what that looks like for the brand in scaling it beyond where it is now, which we were just having a really interesting conversation about this and around how brands have to evolve in order to scale and in order to survive beyond the taste level of the founders and beyond, in a lot of cases, beyond what the original kind of idea and purpose and I guess vision for the brand was. It's like, what does the next phase look like? And that looks very different potentially from what it was going to be originally, because the market evolves, like the brand evolves, like the customer evolves. So yeah, the focus is really on figuring out like where that line is. What does it mean to continue the legacy of the brand versus push the brand into something else that has more scale? At the end of the day, like there is a purpose, but it is about profit, especially now because we can't be non-profitable brands anymore. That's not a thing anymore. So yeah, just figuring that out and working with new partners to figure out what that looks like.
Because this is a, like, as you mentioned, not a huge, big, like, heritage company or multinational company that has acquired you, do you feel like they're more, I don't know if sympathetic is the right word, or they understand where you're at and what you're going through and that you might not have all of the answers? Or
Yeah, 100%. And I think that was part of the reason that we wanted to go down this path. And we had a few different options on the table, but this was the one that made the most sense to, one, yes, grow the brand, but also be able to kind of hang on to parts of the original DNA and parts of the original purpose of the brand, and actually, in some respects, heighten or develop the original purpose even more. And we wouldn't have had that opportunity if we had gone with any other option. Yeah.
I had gotten a reader question recently about a brand that had been acquired, and I guess part of that scaling is maybe ingredient changes, formulation changes, packaging changes. And like this person was like, this is a product I'd been using for years with no issue, and suddenly I have like scalp irritation. It's not working for me. In fact, it's actually harming me. And so this isn't really an area that I've delved too much into in my reporting. So I'm kind of curious of like, what are those challenges in terms of like a potential product change or a reformulation and testing, and how do you navigate that when people are used to this first iteration?
Yeah.
especially because I feel like when you are acquired, or if you work with an investment group, their first thing is like, cool, where can we make savings?
Yeah,
How can
100%.
we cut this?
Yeah, I think that's the natural kind of evolution, but it's definitely a more layered issue in the Black community, and brands that are Black owned being acquired by multinational conglomerates and then having formulas changing, and the customer or community base feeling like it's like a what's the word? Not like backstabbing. What was the word? You feel like betrayal. Yes. There's a sense of betrayal because they've been a customer of the brand. They've helped to build the brand by purchasing products from the brand, and now they feel like you've betrayed them by being acquired by a company that's planning cost savings and changing formulas and things like that. So, I don't know what the answer is, because at the end of the day, whether you're a Black founder or not, ultimately, if you're building a brand, especially if you're venture-backed, the idea is to sell the company. That's kind of the goal. And so, I don't know if there's necessarily an answer, but I do feel like what we've been able to achieve with this particular acquisition is that sense of sympathy for the customer and having a much more flexible partner that actually cares about the customer base and cares about not changing the brand or the products to a point that people feel alienated from it or feel like their favorite products or formulas are going to change. And I don't think a lot of brands necessarily get that opportunity. I think the only time that it would maybe happen is if the brand is already at such a big scale that there's no need to change formulas. There's no like regulatory things that an acquirer wants to be a little bit more strict about, and therefore they have to produce at a different factory or, change something or remove some ingredient.
I think perhaps this is like a conversation that doesn't happen enough, or maybe from my understanding, consumers aren't aware of, that if a company is venture backed, like understanding what that means is that the goal for those VCs is it will be sold again. And the only way that will happen is if you are still growing. And so that pressure to scale at all costs is often placed upon founders, and it's sort of in some ways out of our control. Or we see that is probably the reason why so many founders end up leaving their companies after they've been acquired. Which is sort of why I wanted to ask you, like, this acquisition and this investment in bread, what are you excited about versus what are you scared about, if you're happy to share?
I think, one, excited about having a broader kind of apparatus to develop the brand, because I think that that's always or often a challenge for founders, especially if you're like a first-time founder and you get VC money and then it's like, all right, now you're on your own, go do the thing. You're like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but cool. So I think part of it is also luck in building the right teams. Obviously, like, you have to, like, there's skill involved in building the right teams, but sometimes it's just lucky that you end up with a really great team, the right support system for the brand at every stage that you need to grow. But that is often the biggest challenge. And so that's what I'm most excited for, is like having an inbuilt team that's worked on a similar brand to ours, that's already done it, to come in and support the brand. And then what I'm nervous about, because I'm Chief Creative Officer at the brand now, so I get to focus on the parts that I really love, which is creative. But at the same time, because we're evolving as a brand, there's going to be like tension between what my creative vision is versus where the brand has to go to be in the right, I guess, commercial lane to get to the level of scale that we're going for, which can be challenging when it comes to creative, because creative is so like it's subjective.
Yes.
And I think in the US in particular, the customer here is so different from other markets, somewhat. To me, the customer is different, and the customer often likes things that I don't like. So I have to. I've never really been like a consumer, and I often kind of like things that are, just kind of the opposite of what ends up resonating with a customer. So I have to let go of certain things where it's like, well, this is the creative thing that I want to do, and this is what I like and what I think is cool, versus what's going to resonate enough for the right number of people to buy the product.
Yeah, I think one of the things we wanted to discuss a lot was this idea around community, and I will let you speak to this specifically, but we often start these brands with a small community in mind, or it could be from our specific personal need and thinking, oh, maybe there'll be a few other people who have similar needs or wants to me, and then it grows. Like Fluff, for example, we started with very much a personal need, but I recognized in my 3 younger cousins that they needed a brand like Fluff. We then had a physical retail store in Fitzroy in Melbourne, and we gained like a beautiful small local community from there. And that is so integral to the foundation of our brand, but that is not a profitable business. That community is extremely small and very different to the customer that would shop at a Sephora, let alone an Ulta, let alone at a CVS. And that's where you start thinking, especially with these venture-backed companies, when they are trying to reach all of those customers, your creative has to change in a way, because you're no longer speaking to this sort of small niche community that maybe aligns with you creatively. You have to speak to the masses. And there's a lot of surrendering there, or just trying to, I think, understand how you can find points in your brand or your product that can speak to more people. But I'd love for you to share sort of your thoughts on community or the questions that you raised with us.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, brands using the word community is like it bothers me like quite a bit. I just don't think a brand customer relationship is community per se. Like when I think of community, it's something where there's a shared experience, a shared set of goals, working to meet those same goals. There's like a mutuality in a community that, like, sure, aspects of that exist sometimes in a brand consumer relationship, but a lot of times don't. Like the brand is marketing to the customer and may sometimes be giving them something that they truly like need or want, but the goal is always to extract, like in the crudest terms. So yeah, I mean, and in my writing, like my readers, my subscribers, like I am very mindful to not ever call it a community, because I'm like, I'm in charge here. This is my space. Like you actually don't really have a say in what I'm writing about or how I'm writing about it. So yeah, I guess I'm curious, like how you feel about that and what community gives you, I guess, for marketing purposes or for building that sense of like a shared space between brand and consumer. And like, do you ever feel like this isn't really a community?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I loved when you sort of brought this up as something you wanted to discuss, because I was like, oh yeah, like we reference community. And then I'm like, when I think about it, I don't know what our community is anymore. As I mentioned, when we had a store and there were these young girls between, say, 16 to 23 coming in, and I was personally sitting down and having these 2-3 hour chats with them about their relationship to beauty and how they felt about makeup. Like that was community in every sense. Then COVID happened. We left our store. We've been an online business since. And we have people who write for us for our editorial platform. They're invested in the brand, but the community has become so diluted. But I found ourselves as a brand still referencing these customers a community.
Yeah.
And I know you mentioned that too. It's like, are our customers community or are they just customers? I mean, how do they feel? And I think there are still definitely some people who feel that connection to Fluff, and we have spoken to them in a way that they hadn't experienced before, but it's also two-way. Like I think customers treat us not as someone they care about. It's extremely transactional.
Yeah. It's a weird one because I, over the years, have often found myself, like when we're talking about the brand or we're talking about the customer, wanting to refer to them as customers and consumers, and then kind of like pull myself up and, community is what I'll say instead. But to your point, like it is that there is a transaction, and I don't know if, to me, I feel like the word community has been like co-opted by venture capitalists. It's like every brand has to have a community. Oh, you're a community brand. What does that even mean anymore? Yeah. Is it an ambassador program? Okay. Is it the customer? In what respect is that a community in its truest sense? Is this just customer insights? Gathering customer insights from your customer. Is that community? If you're like a community-driven brand that's working with community to, I don't know, create your products and they're giving input and all of those things, like that is basically customer insight. So yeah, I think it's overused, and I don't necessarily know what it means or who we're referring to anymore when we talk about community and our brands.
I also feel like it's something that the customers, the community wants. Like I see a lot of enthusiasm of like, comments on Instagram. Like, I love this community.
But then is that just a fan?
Space. Yeah, I would call it a fan or an audience. And then when you like pull back and think about like how brands develop these communities and how it became such a big part of like the zeitgeist, it's, less religious affiliation, there's less trust in the government, like those sources where we did find community, a lot of that energy has been funneled toward brands. And so I guess when I think of myself as like a brand too, I'm like, I actually don't like that, the thought of the responsibility of like taking the place of a religion or a government that people don't trust anymore. Like I don't want to like be seen as this like community building authority. I don't know, but I think people do want it. Like I think humans just naturally crave that, but isn't it appropriate space for a brand to like be leaning into, even if the customer.
Do you find that your audience communicates with each other though, or is it very much back and forth with you in comments?
There's some communication with each other too. And something that happened like a couple of years ago, which I really loved, was because I had decided I didn't want to be on social media anymore. I was like very focused on just the newsletter space to cut down on this like back and forth and the comment wars that can get so out of hand on Instagram and TikTok. But a couple of readers decided that they wanted to launch like a Reddit space based on the writing, and people could talk with each other there. And I wasn't really part of it. And I gave them like full permission, like, go ahead, do this. I love the idea of it. I don't really want to be involved. And that felt really good to me. Like, it's nice to know that there are spaces out there that I'm not necessarily part of, but people are communing and talking about the work and the ideas. And like, that feels good to me. And I don't feel the need to be part of it. Yeah.
And is that how you feel as well? You had mentioned how lots of people always ask you for the few products that you would recommend because you have such a critical eye on the beauty industry. And you had mentioned that you've never done affiliate links, or you don't really want to tell people what to use. And it was just strange timing because I had just released a blog post talking about the few products that I do use that I would recommend to people if they weren't using Fluff. And I love that we sort of had different opinions. And for me, I was just like, people always ask me about what they should wear or buy. And I almost got sick of like not responding. And I was just like, look, this is what I use if you're interested, but like find your own way around the beauty industry. But I'm curious where you landed on that.
Yeah, I think I've landed on no recommendations. Like, I've really built it into my wider message too. It's like my work is centered on people, not products. And of course I use products, everybody does, but it just doesn't feel like a space I need to occupy myself. Like, I don't think the products I use will change anyone else's life. I don't think it's going to like better anybody's life to be using the same exact jojoba oil or whatever. And I just also feel like, to your point of like recommending other brands, like there are so many other beauty reporters that do talk about products and have really discerning eyes and good taste and can break down the ingredients. And that space feels like sufficiently full where I don't ever want to be somebody's like sole source for beauty stuff. It's like there are so many other people in this space that you can look to for that. And it might be a little like gatekeepy, but I just don't feel the need to enter that conversation.
It's just interesting because I would say you have this loyal community who value your opinion and respect it so much that that's what they would want from you as an exchange.
But that's, again, why it's not a community. Like, you want that from me and I'm not interested and I'm in charge here, so.
Have you ever felt the temptation? Like, this sort of brings me to the point for you, like purpose versus profit. Like, you could leverage Instagram, you could leverage TikTok in so many ways to grow your brand as a business. And I mean, ultimately, I think it's so hard to ask of any founder or your business or your personal brand is a brand of like, what is your goal forever? It's like it always changes. But where do you sit now in terms of purpose versus it is your career? And I remember reading a post from you recently in which you spoke about the amount of subscribers you have versus the amount that are paid. And so it's like, it is your career too. So where do you sit there?
It's a really great question. And I think when I sort of pulled back on freelancing and put more energy into the newsletter, and I was going to be a little bit more mindful about freelancing, I just came up with this idea of like a mission statement for myself to help guide those decisions. And so it's very corny, but it's just like to materially change beauty culture on a mass scale. And so that's like a constant tension when I get offers or commissions from somewhere. If it's a publication that's going to give put my words in front of more people, that meets part of the statement. If it's a publication that's going to edit it down in such a way that like softens what I'm trying to say, or the message gets corrupted in a little bit for the sake of an advertiser relationship, then that's not worth it for me because that's not changing anything. That's like very status quo. So I guess like some recent examples is I was commissioned by Vogue Business to write something about the future of beauty. And they were kind of like, it's an op-ed, you can write whatever you want. They didn't really edit it much. I was like, this is fantastic, great. This is my ideal commission. It came out and all of the images for the stories were AI generated. And I had no idea they were going to do that. It's just like no real people. So like looking back, I'm like, okay, this is something I kind of wish I hadn't done. But there are plenty of other times where I'll get like a commission from somewhere that would put my work in front of more people, but it's been edited down to the point that the work has no bite. And I'll pull it and I'll say, that's just, I don't care about that. Because my mission is more to like change things rather than write something lukewarm.
And do you feel like you're having that impact or change? Like, what are your milestones or sort of signifiers that it is working? Because I think for any founder, or for me personally, it feels like more often than not, I get signs that it may not be working.
Yeah. No, I feel like it's not working. It's not working yet. Looking just like at the data of the industry and like how much it's growing and how much more people are obsessed with what they look like sort of as a marker for their success in all other areas of life. Like beauty very much, I think, to people feels like something you have to achieve first before you can go for the thing you actually want to do, which is sad. And I don't necessarily see it changing anytime soon. And still I persist. I don't know. I don't know why.
Is it though like specific comments that keep you going though? Like I'm really interested in what makes
I
founder or writer persist.
Right. I get lovely comments and personal emails from people that definitely keep me going, and I'll save them in a folder to look back on if I'm feeling particularly hopeless about the state of the industry. So yeah, it's nice to be reminded that like even if the industry at large is not necessarily changing for the better in ways that I would like to see, there's definitely like change happening at the individual level for readers, which is so nice. I'm really curious about your like purpose and profit and being at odds, because I love, like, that's what really drew me to Fluff when you first reached out. Like the message is very much like anti-beauty standard.
Yeah, it's a very backwards business model.
And yet selling the tools of beauty.
So when Fluff started, like one thing that I love that has sort of stayed true over the last 7 years is sort of my mission to change people's relationship to beauty or to influence their relationship to beauty in a positive way, but more than anything, just to have them reflect on it and to become more aware about the influences in our lives. We started with this idea of like, we are a makeup brand that wants to tell people to wear less makeup, using social media to tell people to get off their phones, which is, again, totally backwards and doesn't work. And I fight that sort of internal friction every day where like, I don't want to post on Instagram on our brand account, but we have to, or I don't want to push product, or I have our email marketing person saying, cool, we're going to up our frequency of emails to 2 times a week. And I'm like, I don't want to get an email from anyone 2 times a week. You know, there's lots of friction there in terms of growing and scaling this brand. I think what Fluff is doing well is trying to have these conversations with people about their relationship to beauty. Yes, we sell product at the end of the day because I don't want to take away from anyone that makeup or beauty can be fun. While I might not have the relationship to beauty that other people do, that's been the biggest thing for me, is trying to like listen and acknowledge everyone's different relationship to beauty, but really just ask them like, why? Where did you learn about beauty? Like, what was your first memory of beauty? What was your first experience with beauty? Did your mom teach you about beauty? Did your dad? You know, how has relationships affected beauty? How has your career affected how you see beauty? And I kind of always come back to that it's okay to want things like makeup or skincare, or to like these things. This is the world we live in. I like those things. And I think beauty and makeup and skincare can be fun. It can be an expression of ourselves, just like fashion. It can be self-care, all of those things. But it is existing in this industry that has exploited it in a lot of different ways. And that's the tension. And it's the tension when you do have investors or stakeholders, in particular VC, because they don't really care about community or about that initial sort of purpose as much as they may tell you and have specifically told me that they're invested in me as a person and my vision. Like, I know that at the end of the day, they are invested in their bank account getting bigger. So it's tricky. Like, we've always approached our brand in a way as this Trojan horse, and that consumers, you know, you can't have a conversation with people that they're not ready for. I didn't want to have this conversation with myself about beauty for a long time. And it was probably not till my like mid to late 20s that I actually was like, why do I wear makeup? Or like, why wasn't I comfortable not wearing makeup around certain people? Like, what did previous partners think of me when I had makeup on versus not wearing makeup? There was so many things that I had just never questioned. And then once I entered that domain, it was really never ending. And that's why for me, like Fluff's mission and why I feel good still doing what we're doing, or why I persist, is that I don't have all the answers, but it's kind of ever evolving. And the fact that we're still having this conversation with people feels good. It definitely feels sometimes like we are walking through like mud or quicksand, or like we're not really getting far. And I also have like a folder of like emails from people who tell me that Fluff has really helped change their relationship to beauty and freed them from some of the constraints of the beauty industry. And that makes me feel good. But I often ask myself, like, why am I doing this? Like, who am I doing this for? You know, I definitely, a part of it was for me personally, and I've resolved my internal sort of friction with beauty. It comes up and down. It's up and down, but it's like, I feel I'm in a good place with the friction. I'm kind of like, it doesn't take over me as much as it used to. Yeah. And then I also realized that I can't fix everyone, which is a big issue of mine. And so I realized that my little cousins who I was trying to save from the beauty industry were just going to do what they were always going to do, you know? So once I got over that too, was just like, I can put stuff out there so long as I don't have like an expectation of that change. That's made it a little bit easier for me to exist. And then the more I kind of, I feel lucky that right now, and only right now, I don't have huge pressures around expansion. Like we need to grow, but not to the point that I feel like the brand is completely diluted. It's like we have this sort of small edit of products that I like, and I see us being able to focus on that and not turn into this like thing that I don't recognize anymore. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's probably sort of similar to what I was saying before around like it comes to a point where you have to evolve beyond that if you're trying to get to a certain point of scale.
Yeah.
I don't think it can be avoided. I've seen it happen to almost every single brand. And I don't know, I feel like we're still in a place where the original purpose of the brand, like we're still working to achieve it. And, you know, it's hair care. It's always been about creating like an edit of your hair care products so that you don't have to feel the overwhelm of there's like 50,000 different shampoos. Which one am I supposed to use? Especially when you have curly hair. It's like, I don't even know where to start. And so giving people an option that's like, this is edited. This is like what you come back to time and time again. It's, you know, the basics of your kind of hair care lineup. And you don't have to, you know, use 50,000 different things or feel like there's confusion. That's still a big part of the brand DNA, but there's parts of the brand that have to and will evolve.
And what about, I feel like when you started, you were disrupting an industry that maybe had 2 or 3 like heritage players in it. But since then, and even in like the last couple of years, so many more have entered, particularly in like the celebrity founded space too. How does that influence your purpose? Like, because I find that especially when all these brands start touting the same taglines, the same edits, the same process, like what do you do in that situation?
I don't know if it's just like arrogance or like, I don't know what the word is, but I still feel like we're doing something very different, even though so many new brands have entered the space, but they all exist in the same space that we do. So we have to be different. And yeah, I don't know. I still feel like we're occupying a space that is different from what those brands are doing, and that there's a particular customer that is going to be drawn to a celebrity brand, but then there's also a customer that is kind of repelled by that. And so there's still a space for a brand or for other brands like that are in our space that aren't celebrity founded brands. And I also look at other categories, and I think there are so many brands in those categories that are competing at the same level as celebrity brands. So, like, why can't we?
I know, like, you have written about celebrity brands before, or a lot. I wanted to be like, oh, where do you think this will play in the future? But I know you're also not an oracle and can't tell. But,
I don't know.
And for me, I think, oh, will it ever die out? Like, surely. And I feel bad being like, I just don't think it will. I think they are here and they will be here and there will always be a place for them. Yeah. And unfortunately, it makes it so much harder for indie brands. And it's one of the reasons why I tell so many aspiring founders not to start a brand. But do you feel the same?
I do. I think I was hoping for a while that the big celebrity beauty boom would kind of die down, or it would be a trend, but I do think it's kind of sticking around. And like, since this started, I don't know, 10 years ago in earnest, like, there have been so many flops of celebrity beauty brands. Like, they're not all successful. This is not like a guaranteed space for a celebrity either. Like, many of them are bad and the customers know and they're not interested in it. But then there are, of course, like the celebrities who break through, like a Sacred, like a Road from Hailey Bieber. And I think those are still going to be very compelling to the customer for like ever, maybe. I mean, I don't know if it's so much of a big shift. It's just that, you know, celebrities have always been integral to selling beauty. They've mostly been like spokespeople throughout history. And now it's so easy-ish to kind of start your own brand as a celebrity. And it's like, why be the face of a brand when I could be the face of a brand and make all of that money from my face?
Totally.
So it's, yeah. I think that's such a great point. Yeah. The merchification of the beauty space is real and it's happening. And there are, I mean, just the celebrities where people will buy anything they put out, whether it's like a bucket hat or a moisturizer or an album. Like, it's all kind of the same. This is like kind of unrelated, but I was at an event for the author Atessa Moshfegh a couple of weeks ago, and it was an auction, and there were things she was auctioning off that were like a writing lesson with her, or she gives feedback on your work. And then the item that got the most money was a painting she had made. And it just really made me think of just like this aestheticization of like the thing that you are known for. Like, people are actually more interested in aesthetic object that like represents your work than your work sometimes. And I think that's a lot of what's happening in the celebrity beauty space. They've just transcended this level of like being an icon, that these aesthetic objects they're creating like sort of represent themselves, and the fans will buy regardless.
I have so many thoughts, but then I just get stuck in them because I'm just like, I don't know what to do with it. And sometimes I think like, are consumers really that, I mean, I feel bad saying dumb, but I'm just like, why are they just buying this stuff?
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I think the Kardashian family is like the biggest example where I laugh, where I'm like, can they just stop making things? Like, who is buying this stuff? But yeah, the popcorn is the latest one, like, killed me. I was just like, wow. But I feel like it's moved past a point now where people actually, like, I think they will sell to people just who want to try it, who aren't interested in it. Yeah. And the discussion we're probably not having in the industry is like, these brands, particularly from this one family, probably will last maybe a year to 2 years and make a substantial amount of money. Whether there's profit in that, I don't know. But are we now in an era of brands being around for 2 to 5 years and that's it?
Yeah.
Is there ever going to be another L'Oreal or another Coca-Cola? Like, you know, we can extrapolate this out to the beverage industry or the fashion industry. It's like there's so many industries that are facing this problem of so many brands coming in the celebrity effect, and I don't really know what the answer is.
Yeah, it's like the trend cycle that beauty brands have like fed into is coming for the beauty brand. Like it's quickening the consumer attention span of like how long can you be relevant almost.
Yeah, I mean, that's the question that's come up for me now being 7-8 years in, and I'd love to know what you think as well, where I was like, do I want to keep doing this for past 10 years? You know, this was an incredible brand for me to have in my late 20s to now my mid 30s, and when we brought on more senior staff, when we committed to more investment, I had to have this conversation with myself where I was like, wow, I'm going to be doing this in my 40s, like still. And the way I think about beauty when I started at 28 is like very different to how I'm starting to think about beauty and to still try and have these conversations with consumers. And to be honest, there are things that I used to care about that I no longer care about. But trying to manage that conversation with the people who still care about that is really tricky and really hard. And I don't know if you even feel that way about your writing. There's probably things that you used to write about and care about and don't anymore, but people want to hear that from you.
Yeah, I feel like I've had, I don't know, I flip-flop between extremes where it was like, I started out writing for the Kardashian-Jenner apps. Like I was creating content for Kylie when she was launching the lip kits and things like that. And then sort of had this crisis of the soul and like, what am I doing? And then I switched to more like skincare reporting. I was very into like natural skincare, and then I was like, no, I've been duped by like big natural. It's chemicals are fine, and you know, I've like swung all over the place, and I've settled into a place that I like feel good about now, thinking more about like standards and like the social effects of beauty standards rather than the products and the ingredient level. But yeah, I think my hope is that I am someday not obsessed with beauty and I don't write about it anymore. Like that would be so exciting for me if it did not eat me up inside every day, so much so that I was like compelled to make it my life to work through the issues that I've had with beauty and beauty standards my whole life. Like, so yeah, I would love to not care someday. That's the goal.
What about you? Where do you feel like I mean, now that you have been acquired, like, and you know as well that there's many more years potentially tied to this brand, how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, it's challenging. And I was saying to someone before, I was like, I wish I could have a brand that wasn't a product. But like you, I'm still so obsessed with maybe not necessarily like beauty in general, but like beauty products and like the industry of it all. And there was something we were chatting about earlier, which was around like something to do with like starting brands. And I realized that some of us are doing this because, yes, we're trying to build profit and revenue and all those things, but also because we can't do anything else or like don't want to do anything else. So I'm like, I can't be like an employee. I can't do it. It's just not in my nature. And so I have to be in this space of being a founder or owning a business or whatever it is, but I can't do something that's not a product, that's not a beauty product. I just can't do it. So I'm excited by the prospect of continuing to build on the brand that I created and to see where it can go. But at the same time, I think ultimately what makes me happy and what makes me feel like I can keep going is that I just love to learn. And I know I'm going to learn a lot in this process. I learned a lot on my own doing it for the past 4 or 5 years. And there's a lot more that I can learn in the next phase. And that's kind of what keeps me going. I'm like, even if I'm broke, I'm still learning. Like, it's great.
That's beautiful.
Well, I probably every second day ask myself like what I would do if I wasn't doing Fluff.
Yeah.
And then there's been times where I've really been like, well, if you're questioning, like, why don't you, what would it look like if you decided, you know what, Fluff it's been a great 7-8 years, but I'm no longer getting what I thought I wanted to get out of it. Maybe I'll just close up shop. What would that look like? Mm-hmm. And I think about it and I'm like, well, what would I do? Would I go work for someone else? And I'm like, I don't think I'm really interested in doing that. And then I think we've all got to do something with our hours, and maybe this is the best thing for me to be doing right now, so long as I'm still learning. And there are times where I feel like I'm not learning, and that's when it increases that I'm like, maybe I shouldn't do this anymore. But then something pulls me back in where I'm like, there's either people to connect with or people to work with that have an interesting lens on beauty that I want to discuss. Or I think another thing that keeps me in the industry is the sort of bad brands that are in the industry. And I think, we've got to provide an alternative narrative, an alternative product, because otherwise I'm just letting these people win. I think that's like maybe my competitive nature
of like, well, if they're doing it and it's that bad,
yeah,
why don't we make something much better?
Yeah,
and do it better.
And then just the question of, again, being like, what does success look like for me? And that's changed a lot over time in terms of everything from our revenue to the brand perception to whether we have an office or not to our head count. Like, it's changed so much over the years. And with my previous brand, we had a huge office and 35 staff, and now we're a fully remote team with like 9 core staff. And I never would have thought I would go into that position, and I often think maybe we could scale our team down even more. And it's not for every brand. Like, some brands, I think it works for them to have an office and to have the staff forward facing, and it's a part of it. But something in me was like, I'm not into that anymore. And we were just saying before how there's like, while logically I can be like, this is what a beauty founder does, this is what a beauty brand should look like, this is how you operate on social, something in my body was literally like, I can't do it that way, I don't want to do it. And I'm sure you probably felt that way about your writing at some point too. Like, this is what a beauty journalist does and reports on and maintains an industry or a narrative around beauty.
Yeah, I think that's, a big part of the reason that I got off of social media. It was like I was starting to get addicted to like the front-facing video explaining what I was writing about, and people were engaging with that more than they were like engaging with the writing. And it was, it feels like a little microcosm of beauty culture. Like, as you're talking about, like, this is what a founder should look like, this is what a brand should look like. Beauty culture encourages us to take an experience and reduce it to its appearance. And I think that always just makes for like a less fulfilling life and less fulfilling work. And so I think I'm always, and that's just a human struggle. So I think I'm always bumping up against like, what am I doing that's influenced by what I think the appearance of something should be versus the experience like in my body and in my brain. And going with like your body and brain is probably, at least if not more profitable, more like fulfilling and life enhancing.
I feel exactly the same, but I often, when I struggle or think that there's no point, is when I'd be like, how many other people think this way? You know, how many consumers are reflecting on their relationship to beauty, or how many people are just like, well, I have these conversations with people all the time where they're like, what do you mean? I love makeup. Makeup's fun. It's great. What's wrong with it? They're like, Erika, you're such a downer. Why are you having these conversations? And I'm like, oh, maybe it is just me. Or there's these like small niche groups that are questioning it. But again, the masses that the VCs are wanting to target, like, they've got no issue, or they're not aware of any issue with beauty. They love the industry. They love having more.
Right. Well, I always like to say, like, of course, beauty can be this like wonderful, joyful, expressive thing. And then I think there's sort of like a darker component to it where buying products and applying products and manipulating our appearance to inch closer to this ideal, like, of course gives you confidence. Of course that makes you feel good. Of course, when you're doing that, you feel good, but it's because we're starting at a deficit from all of this like beauty culture conditioning we've been fed throughout our lives. So there's a point where beauty can feel good just because it's like a joyful expression. And then there's a part where beauty can feel good because you're feeling bad and haven't necessarily identified why, because it's so normalized. Like we just, at least I, like, you just grow up kind of thinking like, oh, this is just how it feels to be in a female body. It's pretty bad and products can help, and yay. Like, I like that. So yeah, I think there's a lot that's like not necessarily been identified for people on the individual level yet, because this is so just normalized. Like, it's how the world works. I don't know.
We sort of had this conversation earlier about how even your writing, but our brand started from this sort of like personal need for these products, or you sort of spoke about like personal beauty trauma that we've been trying to like remedy or fix. And mine was definitely about like relationship to makeup, how much I wore, how much I was covering up, and trying to like free myself of those constraints. I'm not sure if what your personal experience was, but then by way of creating a brand, we're almost like contributing to it, because we're still asking people to buy product, as opposed to just saying, you don't need it, just accept yourself as you are.
Yeah.
And I don't know, again, then how the VC funding or having more stakeholders involved comes into it, whether they care about that or they're just like, increase your product line, like more, as opposed to protecting that edit of products.
I think it depends on the point in time. The point in time where you're either pre-launch or pre-raise, everybody cares about the story. What is your personal trauma that has driven your decision to launch this brand? And why does it matter? And like, there's like a juicy like story attached that they feel either personally attached to. I think some VCs, like angel investors, can feel personally attached to your founding story. But then I think VCs are attached to the potential of that story attached to your brand that will drive revenue. But then once you're past that point, then it really becomes about, okay, what's actually going to like drive growth? The story and like really maintaining like the ethos and like all of those things become completely secondary.
It's hard. We were saying how you can get in then this like trap that you create for yourself, in that you pull consumers in via this emotional story, and then they become emotionally connected to your brand. And then there's times where I'm like, whoa, you guys are getting too emotional. Like I need to just sell more product.
Right.
And that's a really hard, it's a conflict that we face.
Yeah.
And you're right. And I think it's particularly for beauty that there is this trauma involved, or personal story. Like, it's not as much, I believe, in fashion or in food that people are like,
or technology.
Yeah.
Just think about like your laptop or your
just
iPhone.
anything. But we have to say, like, this was my pain point and this is what I struggled with. And, you know, there's very few beauty brands that I can even think of off the top of my head that were like, I just wanted to make a bronzing powder, or I just wanted more color. Like,
but even if that's the case, that'll never be the spoken case.
Yes.
Like, even if it's just, oh my God, there's this amazing opportunity to sell a bronzer to, you know, I don't know, this particular customer, the story gets reverse engineered to give the brand life. And everything becomes, we also spoke about this a little bit before around how like the purpose can become artificial for the brands, and that there was like this almost like renaissance of a time where purpose-driven brands became like the cut-through brands, because there were so many legacy brands, they weren't really speaking to their customers in a way that resonated, especially for millennials. And then all of these purpose-driven brands started coming into the market in different categories, and it kind of created almost a trend. So it was like, oh, well, to drive profit and to drive revenue, you have to have this outward purpose that people can become attached to. And then people start artificially creating them. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's nice. Yeah. And I mean, that becomes their purpose ultimately. But yeah, I think hair is an interesting one, because it is like, there's just so many, one, like celebrity brands, two, the science driven brands, and then they tend to get categorized in that way as well, where it's like, well, all the hair care brands are science-based brands. It's all science.
It's chemistry to make it. Yeah, they're in a lab.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's, are we going to revert back to the time where like actual purpose becomes part of the brands because it's all so diluted now? Yeah, definitely. It's weird though, because I feel like that's what we see, right? With the brands that we see that are successful, that are founder led or like personality led. Is it just that we see them more because that's the style of brand that they are, and therefore we see them more in media? Because there are so many brands that are extremely successful. We have no idea who created the brands. But we may not see them as much. That's kind of what I'm grappling with in my mind. I'm like, is that what it is? Or is this just a particular style of brand that is not necessarily like the way to create a brand? It's just like one track and one path. Yes. Like I think about, what's the brand with the shower heads? Jolie, I think. Yeah. Well, actually, to be fair, their founder is pretty forward, but on like a LinkedIn basis versus like, doing like Marie Claire interviews or whatever it is. But there's so many brands, I think, like that, where I'm like, oh, you don't have to be a founder-led brand to be successful. I think it's just
the boom of founder-led brands. How has that affected each of you? Like, do you feel a pressure to like be? Yeah. Yes. Tell me more.
Badly in the sense that I think because bread was started from a personal trauma or personal need, there was like an implied kind of expectation that it would be a founder-led brand. And over time, or even I think in the beginning less so, but like over time, I've kind of come to the realization that I don't want to be founder-led. And I like building the brand and doing the things, but not necessarily in front of a camera. And it's not for everybody, but there is an expectation that it is.
Yeah, luckily I don't have anyone putting pressure on me to be out there more than I currently am. So the pressure only comes from myself and seeing other brands, and just sort of like you said, like there's plenty of successful brands that aren't founder led, but for some reason I remember the ones that are, and that puts internal pressure on me to be like, I should be going hard on TikTok, I should be telling my story more. And there is somewhat of a formula for it, that I know the type of reels that I should make or the conversations I should be having. But again, it's more of this physical response where I'm like, it's just not me. I have like tried to, and I just can't. There's, I think, a certain level of anonymity that I want to maintain. I like people knowing what I have created or listening to our podcast, but I've never really liked the idea maybe of someone just recognizing me in the street and intruding on that sort of private life aspect. And I've also seen and heard about, I guess, the side effects or how bad that is for some founders. And it's just not something that I crave or want. And I think even now, like, people do know who I am, and I get customers commenting sometimes on my personal Instagram, and it feels really intrusive and it feels not right. But again, this is a bed that I have made and I have put myself forward facing. So it's just really an internal struggle and conflict that I just have to kind of work through day to day.
Yeah. On that road note, I find the road, I guess, community or like customer base to be so incredibly unhinged. I don't know if anyone's ever been on the road Reddit. I happened across it, and if you haven't, I really do encourage you to go and check it out.
It's fun time. Divert your scrolling for a minute.
That kind of was one of the things that I witnessed where I realized, like, oh, is this a community or is this just like rabid fandom? And that's really what VCs are wanting the brands to create. It's not community. It is just this like voraciousness and fandom that makes people go nuts.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like beauty more than any other industry really hits this like emotional tone with people. And you had been saying like, are we to blame if our customers feel emotionally connected to us or to the products in a way that feels like a little too much or unhealthy? And I just kind of think it's the nature of beauty. Like it's inherently emotional, and it's also just such a big part of identity. Like I always love to talk about the brain skin axis. Like there are neurons and neural pathways that connect like our skin and our brain, and that is a part of identity building. Like even tattoos, you know, when they first originated, it's like a way to make something, you know, in your brain real and knowable to other people. And I think like that's the same thing that people are getting from beauty brands, and we're almost like hardwired to be very emotional about it. Like it's in our body. And then I also think it's important to like think about the fact that like in beauty, you actually like your products become part of the customer's body. It's like absorbing into their pores. It's laying on the top layer of their skin. It's like mingling with their hair. Like that's such a deep and emotional connection. And like people just feel it's a big part of identity making. And I don't think there's a way to like separate that sort of like deep emotional, sometimes tipping over into like rabid and unhinged connection from beauty. Like
That's true.
I don't know.
So we didn't create this. We didn't do
It's
this.
not your fault, guys.
It's inherent. We're good.
I wanted to sort of, as we round out the conversation, like ask each of you, when was the last time you felt emotional in a positive way about beauty from a brand, whether that's a product, a campaign, or a founder?
Okay, this is kind of dodging the question a little bit.
Yeah.
Sort of. But I felt actually really positive at the pushback to the Vogue business package that I had mentioned. So I sent that article out to my readership and immediately was like flooded with emails and comments just being like, they used AI generated imagery. Like the people in these photos aren't real. This is so upsetting. And that actually made me feel really positive because I was like, oh, great. So we want real people. Like we like actual humans and real bodies. Like people are having this sort of like visceral gut reaction in a negative way to like AI generated beauty images, which I think is a good sign. So that made me feel happy.
Okay, so extremely self-indulgent.
Yeah.
Apologies.
No.
But honestly, it was the reaction to our acquisition announcement. I wasn't necessarily expecting that. And I was like really nervous about it. But yeah, the positive reaction that we got, that was like overwhelmingly positive, was I think a good sign, I feel like, because we did the thing for, you know, the right reasons, and the fact that the audience or community responded in the way that they did was like validating and really positive. So
I know, I remember messaging and being like, is this what everyone thinks? And like, just like, are these the kind of messages you're getting? Or like, how are you feeling? You're just like, yeah, what happens?
well, everyone thinks I'm a billionaire now.
Yeah.
I'm very far.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm really positive.
Yeah. I can't think off the top of my head like beauty specifically that's made me feel that great. I often always just laugh at liquid deaths campaigns. I think it's hilarious that, like, ridiculous that they're charging so much for just water in a can. But what I love is that they're just like, it's water in a can, and they're just like, their campaigns are so outrageous and stupid. But they're like, if you can't see past it, this is intentionally so outrageous and stupid, then that's on you. And I love any brand that tries to empower, what a bad word to use, but just encourage consumers to use their brains. And because I think that's what has been this weird trade-off, that consumers aren't sort of standing for their own intelligence, and like brands are manipulating that. And it's like, we're all smart. We should be, we're almost being too gullible sometimes with brands. And so if a brand can just tell it like it is, and then invite consumers to choose, and without having to get, frustrated or be like, this is exploitive. It's like, yeah, so don't buy from them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, completely.
That's sort of where I've landed.
I love it. We're all so jaded.
Thank you both so much. Like this was probably selfishly, for me to be able to have a really honest, vulnerable conversation, because it's very rare that it happens in our industry. I find it events, I'll see other founders and I'm like, how are you? And they're just like, great, everything's great. And then they text me behind the scenes and they're like, everything is not great. And I wish there were more conversations about, one, there is really amazing, joyful, like, things that you can learn being in this industry, but there is another side of it too, which is more nuanced and hard. And I think the more we can appreciate both sides and have these conversations together with consumers, with people in the industry, the better. So thank you for your time. And thanks everyone for coming on your Sunday night. I really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.